What happens when the world's most high-reversal prince meets America's sharpest tongue on live TV? Viewers expected smiles, charity talk, and polite conversation. What they got instead was an emotional train wreck that slowly spiraled from awkward to electric, the kind of tension you can't script and no one dares look away from. Howard Stern had been invited as a guest co-host on The View for the week, a choice that already raised eyebrows. He wasn't a typical daytime personality. The show, known for its opinionated but measured discussions, had been suffering from lagging ratings, and someone in production decided to roll the dice. That roll came with untamed hair, tinted sunglasses he refused to remove indoors, and a wry, unfiltered grin that screamed rebellion. The morning started like any other, steaming mugs perfectly aligned, camera dollies gliding across the floor, producers moving with caffeinated urgency. But beneath the surface was a different kind of energy, the kind that precedes a live wire moment. Everyone knew today's episode had combustible potential, because across from Howard would sit Prince Harry. Dressed in a tailored gray suit and an open-collar navy shirt, Harry entered the studio with that familiar balance of humility and polished calm. He smiled, waved, nodded, every move as if it had been approved by a silent advisor. The applause was loud, enthusiastic, and yet somehow didn't feel spontaneous. Whoopi Goldberg introduced the segment. Today on The View, we're joined by Prince Harry, here to speak about his foundation work, his new documentary on veteran reintegration and mental health advocacy. Howard, of course, didn't wait long. With a theatrical bow, he quipped, "And here I thought we'd be talking royal scandals. Guess I missed the morning memo." The crowd laughed, but Harry's smile barely wavered. Just a slight clench in his jaw. "Nice to meet you too, Howard," Harry replied smoothly. Whoopi, sensing the edges fraying early, shifted the conversation back to safe territory, Harry's non-profit work. And for a moment, things leveled out. Harry spoke about veterans, trauma, recovery, his words carefully chosen, each sentence landing with practiced empathy. The audience nodded along. On the surface, everything was fine. But Howard Stern doesn't live on the surface. "So let me ask you this," Howard said suddenly, interrupting mid-sentence. "You say you're helping veterans find their voices. Is that what you're doing with your story, reclaiming your own voice? Or did you just lose it somewhere along the way?" The question hung heavy in the air. A silence settled, too sharp to ignore. Harry blinked, then chuckled faintly. "I think storytelling is a powerful tool. When it's used for good, it creates empathy and awareness." Howard leaned in, the grin now more wolf than amused. "Sure. But when does storytelling become self-promotion? You're not just sharing a story, Harry. You're building a brand." That smile on Harry's face started to flicker. "That's an interesting take." Howard nodded, not backing down. "I mean, most people don't process trauma on Oprah's couch and then walk into a Netflix deal." A ripple of nervous laughter. Joy Behar jumped in, trying to steer the ship back on course. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Harry, tell us more about your upcoming project this month." Harry exhaled, grateful for the redirect. "Absolutely. We're working on creating civilian pathways for veterans. That includes not just physical support, but emotional connection, social belonging." He continued, but Howard wasn't done. He leaned back, arms folded, eyes fixed like a chess player studying his opponent. When Harry wrapped his statement, Howard struck again. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. Harry narrowed his eyes. "Miss what?" "The palaces. The attention. Being the golden boy." Harry's tone tightened. "That was never me. That was a role created for me." Howard tilted his head. "So walking away, moving to L.A., doing interviews and podcasts and premieres, that's all just escaping the role, huh? Not staying in a different kind of spotlight?" Harry's voice dropped slightly. "I stepped away to live authentically. That's not the same as disappearing." "But you didn't just step away, Harry," Howard pressed. "You stepped into something else. A production company. Books. Documentaries. If you really didn't want the attention, why not go live on a farm in New Zealand?" Whoopi shot Howard a look. "Howard." "No, seriously," he continued. "I'm not saying he doesn't care. I'm just asking the question everyone's too polite to ask. What's the line between healing and marketing trauma. The studio air felt colder now. The audience wasn't laughing anymore. Harry adjusted his posture. I don't think I need to justify my choices to you. Howard raised his hands in mock surrender. I'm just saying what people are thinking. From the outside, it looks like you've turned your past into a product. Respect goes both ways, Harry said evenly. I've spent years trying to shift the narrative, trying to draw attention to causes bigger than myself. If some people can't see past tabloid headlines, that's not my burden to carry. Howard smiled, but the sarcasm didn't hide. Sounds rehearsed. For a moment, you could hear nothing but the faint whir of a camera lens adjusting. Then Harry leaned forward. His voice was calm, but the steel had entered. You know, Howard, you talk about branding like it's a bad thing. But maybe that says more about how you view people than how I live my life. If someone survives something and then uses their platform to help others avoid the same, maybe that's not exploitation. Maybe that's purpose. Howard didn't flinch, but his grin shrank just a little. Harry continued, You've built a career saying the unsayable. I respect that. But don't confuse honesty with cruelty. Silence again. The kind that demands reflection. Joy exhaled, breaking the tension. Well, this is definitely not your average royal interview. Harry turned to her, offered a wry smile. Nothing about my life has been average. Whoopi tried to soften the landing. That's what makes conversations like this matter, even if they're uncomfortable. Howard shrugged, as if washing his hands of it all. Hey, discomfort's where the truth lives. Harry replied simply, sometimes. Other times, it's just where the noise is. Another silence. Not the playful pause of daytime banter, but a stillness dense enough to press against the walls of the studio. Even the audience, primed for claps and chuckles, seemed unsure whether to laugh or look away. It was a moment suspended in discomfort. Joy Behar, always the seasoned hand in a storm, finally broke the tension. All right. We're going to keep this going, but when we come back from break, we'll dive into Prince Harry's upcoming charity gala. Howard cut in with a smirk. Can't wait to hear how much the tickets cost. A ripple of half-laughter. Nervous. Uncertain. Harry exhaled through his nose. His jaw clenched, not visibly, but enough that anyone watching closely could feel the shift. The polite prince mask was slipping, not because he lost control, but because he was choosing to show the man beneath it. As the cameras pulled back, the broadcast slipped into commercial. The final frame showed Howard lounging smugly in his chair, and Harry, sitting upright, eyes locked on Stern, no smile, no amusement. Just a cold, direct stare. This wasn't over. Not even close. When the view returned, the lighting was the same, the coffee mugs hadn't moved, but everything else had changed. The host smiled, but the cheer felt pasted on. Whoopi tried to reset the tone. We're back with Prince Harry, talking about his powerful work in mental health, veteran reintegration, and community building around the globe. The camera panned to Harry. He sat a bit straighter now, smile tighter, eyes sharper. One finger tapped softly against his knee, the only betrayal of the tension he carried. Across from him, Howard Stern looked unervingly at ease. Arms stretched along the back of his chair like a man who felt completely in control. He didn't just sit at the table. He seemed to challenge its very balance. Joy attempted to shift the segment toward Harry's upcoming charity gala. You've brought together so many people for this cause. Tell us a bit about the inspiration behind the event. But Howard interrupted again. So let me get this straight, he began casually. You left royal life to escape the media. And yet here you are, on the most watched morning show in the country. Harry nodded slowly, meeting his gaze. I left an institution. I didn't leave my voice. Howard grinned. But you sure didn't leave the cameras, did you? The audience gave a soft, awkward laugh. Not because it was funny, but because they didn't know what else to do. Harry leaned in, his tone sharper. There's a difference between choosing how your story is told and being hunted for it. Howard tilted his head, like a predator toying with prey. Sure. But don't you think constantly reminding people how miserable you were is, I don't know, exhausting? Joy tried to stop it. Let's not. No, Harry cut in, cool and deliberate. It's a fair question. When you've lived your life under surveillance, silence becomes protection for the people who hurt you. Speaking up isn't complaining, it's taking your narrative back. Howard's smirk returned. That sounds like something your therapist told you to say. No laughter this time. Just silence. Tense and tight. Even the crew behind the cameras seemed to stop moving. Whoopi, sensing the temperature drop, changed the subject. Your children, Harry. How are they adjusting to life in California? Harry's shoulders relaxed slightly. A softness crept into his expression. They're thriving. They love the outdoors, the open space. They're growing up free. Howard leaned forward, eyebrow raised. Free from what, exactly? Rules. Structure. Accountability. Harry didn't flinch. He turned fully toward Stern. Free from being born into an identity they didn't choose. Free from being chased by cameras before they could walk. Free from being commodified by a system that values titles more than truth. Howard waited a beat, then leaned in, voice quieter now, but just as cutting. Right. Except for the Netflix cameras in the living room, huh? That was the final needle. Harry didn't yell. He didn't even raise his voice. But when he spoke, the temperature in the room dropped a full degree. I'm not here to debate my children's privacy with someone who built a career by poking into the lives of others, he said. If you think being unfiltered makes you brave, then you've confused cruelty with honesty. For the first time, Howard didn't have a quick comeback. He blinked. The silence stretched, long enough for Joy to visibly reach for her coffee like it might anchor her to the table. But Howard recovered. And he wasn't done. Tell me something, Harry, he said, lowering his voice again. Without the crown, without the title, are you even interesting? Joy gasped. A sharp inhale. Audible. The audience froze. Howard leaned forward, cutting the air with his next question. Who are you when you're not a royal? When there's no scandal, no Meghan, no documentary crew following you around. Just a guy in California doing podcasts. Harry stared at him, not blinking, not responding. Just looking. And in that look was a fire so still, so quiet, that for a full second, Howard Stern, the king of confrontation, went completely silent. Whoopi dove in like a lifeguard. We're going to take another break, she said, voice composed but clipped. When we return, we'll talk about Harry's humanitarian work in Africa and the global mental health movement. The screen faded to commercial. But the tension did not. It stayed in the room like fog that wouldn't lift. Harry remained still. His eyes never left Howard. His jaw was set. His fingers stopped tapping. Howard, for once, looked slightly less smug, amused still, but not untouched. The control room buzzed. Staff whispered behind the scenes. Producers scrambled. Howard had crossed a line. And Harry wasn't finished. When the show returned, the vibe had changed completely. The smiles were mechanical. The laughter had vanished. Even the lighting felt harsher. It wasn't a talk show anymore. It was a chessboard. Whoopi tried to resume. We're back with Prince Harry, continuing our conversation about his work in global mental health. But before she could finish the sentence, Howard lifted a finger. Hold that thought, Whoopi. She froze, eyes narrowing. Howard turned slowly to Harry, his voice suddenly low, nearly whispering, but loaded. Harry, what's it like, being the second most famous person in your marriage? There was another heavy silence in the studio. No music, no laughter, not even polite coughing from the audience. Everyone seemed frozen, unsure whether to cringe or clap or just look away. Joy Behar's hand shot to her mouth. She didn't even try to cover the shock on her face. Howard Stern leaned forward, eyes locked on Harry. Let's be honest, he said. People didn't buy your book because you wrote it. They bought it because of Meghan. She's the headline. She's the brand. She's the reason people care. You're just the plus one. Harry's face darkened. His jaw clenched so tight you could see the muscle jump. His voice, when it finally came, was low and cold. She's my wife, he said. Not a headline. Howard raised an eyebrow. No, she's both. And she knows it. That's why she's smart. But let's not kid ourselves. This whole new Prince Harry image? That was built around her charisma, her star power. So tell me, was stepping out of your brother's shadow worth stepping into hers? Harry sat forward. He was trying to stay calm, but the cracks were showing now. His eyes burned. I stepped out of a toxic system, he said. One that destroyed my mother. I chose my wife. I chose my family. I chose truth over tradition. If that bothers you, Howard, maybe it's because you've never risked anything for someone else in your life. Howard didn't blink. You chose attention over privacy, he shot back. You chose production deals over quiet healing. Don't act like you're Gandhi with a Netflix deal. That was enough for Whoopi Goldberg. Her voice came in, firm and clear. All right, that's enough. Let's take it down a level. These are real people we're talking about. But Harry didn't back off. He turned to her and said quietly, No, let him go on. This is clearly why I was invited. Howard shrugged. You were invited because people still care. That's your last real currency, Harry. But if all you do is talk about how bad your life was, a life most people couldn't even imagine, people are going to stop listening. Harry gripped the table, his knuckles white now. I didn't ask for that life, he said sharply. I was born into it. Howard leaned closer. And then you turned it into a brand. Spare, Spotify, Netflix. Come on, man. You're not breaking free. You're just selling a different version. Joy tried to jump in again. Okay, we're going to pivot to. But Howard cut her off. No. Let's be real. He says he wants honesty. So here it is. Harry's voice rose for the first time. You have no idea what it's like to live every day under attack. To see your wife smeared in the press, your kids stalked by strangers with cameras. And you sit behind a microphone and throw insults. That's not courage, Howard. That's hiding behind a soundboard. Howard's voice dropped in tone but stayed sharp. And yet, you're still here. Still doing interviews. Still talking. Because you need it. Because when the cameras stop, you're just a guy with a famous last name and no real job. The silence that followed stung. Nobody laughed. Nobody whispered. Not even the hosts could speak. Then Harry stood. He didn't shout. He didn't slam his chair. He stood slowly, quietly, but the moment felt loud. He stared down at Howard. You know nothing about my life, he said. And I've already wasted too much time trying to explain myself to people like you. Howard stayed seated, looking up at him. Then stopped trying. Harry's eyes flared. Maybe I will. Then he turned to Whoopi and Joy. His tone softened, but his words were firm. Thank you both, he said. But I won't sit here and let my family be turned into entertainment. Joy opened her mouth, trying to speak, but Harry was already walking away. The cameras followed him as he left the stage. There was no applause. No one moved. Even the audience sat frozen, unsure what they had just witnessed. Howard leaned back, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He wasn't smiling. He didn't look smug. He looked steady. Maybe even a little unsettled. Whoopi finally spoke. We'll be right back. The screen cut to black. When the view returned from commercial, everything felt different. The camera, usually showing a full table of hosts chatting and smiling, showed just 3 people now. Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Howard Stern, sitting where Prince Harry had just been. The crowd was still quiet. You could feel the awkward tension, hanging in the air like smoke. Whoopi spoke first, her voice calm but tight. As you just saw, Prince Harry left us a little early this morning. We want to thank him for his time. But Howard interrupted. No. Don't do that, Whoopi. Don't pretend this was just another happy segment. She looked at him, surprised. Joy stayed silent, arms folded, watching him carefully. Howard turned to the camera. His voice softened a little. Look, this wasn't a PR moment. It wasn't a friendly sit-down where everyone smiles and drinks from mugs. This was real. And maybe that's what's been missing all along. Some of the audience leaned in. Others looked uncomfortable, unsure where this was going. "I get it," Howard continued. "Prince Harry has lived a life none of us can fully understand. Born into fame, raised in a goldfish bowl, losing his mother the way he did, that leaves scars." He looked down briefly, then back up at the camera. "But I wasn't attacking that boy. I was questioning the man who's built a platform telling that boy's story." "You don't think you pushed too far?" Howard nodded, serious. "Of course I did. That's my job. If I don't ask the question, who will?" Joy asked, "But do you regret it?" Howard shrugged. "I regret that he walked off. Not for the drama, but because we were finally getting somewhere." He looked at the camera. "Harry's not a villain or a saint. He's a man trapped between a world he couldn't control and a spotlight he won't step out of. Maybe that's the real story." The audience clapped. Joy gave a small nod. Then came the news. Prince Harry had left the building. No comment. Howard stood, adjusted his jacket. "Thanks for letting me stir the pot." Joy laughed. "You didn't stir it, you flipped it over." The screen faded to black. Was this a breakthrough or a breakdown? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe and turn on notifications for more explosive showdowns.